record to the computer. Cool. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is This Machine Kills Fascist. I am your facilitator, Dorian Wallace, and today we have on Gwenith Kikkawa, who is an activist, a scholar, a theater person, a cult survivor, which is how we know each other. And just in the spirit of this podcast, we're kind of freeform chatting today. And because both of us have connections to the cult recovery world, I imagine that's going to be coming up a lot. But also, Gweneth did want to talk about. I had a concert last weekend, and so there were actually some questions that they had for me, which I don't want to make this like that kind of discussion necessarily, but like I'm down to like talk about it a little bit. But yeah, Gweneth, how are you doing?
I'm excellent. And, should warn you, I actually wrote questions down. I have a lot of questions. So, yeah, I think what you're doing is really, really important to say the least, um, and very relevant to so many things right now. And I'm, genuinely curious about process and just how you have so many like intersecting and overlapping areas coming
Hmm,
together. Um, I actually feel like I know you better after the concert, or after the
hmm,
release, and I don't
that
know
makes
exactly why and how to explain it, but that's what the feeling I walked away with.
that makes a lot of sense. I will tell you. So now that you've actually heard me play piano, for
Hmm.
all y'all that don't know, I am a professional piano player here in New York, and it was just to talk about cults. I remember when I watched the Nexium documentary and Keith Raniere was playing piano, and I was very impressed. Like the first time I heard him play, and when I watched it the second time, it really made it clear how good he is at scamming people because
Mm.
I literally read it as, wow, that dude can play pretty well, but then realized that he can play three pieces very mediocrely. Um,
Mm.
but makes it like part of his whole look how enlightened, how much of a genius I am kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just very interesting because I'm a pro piano player. I listen to lots of people play, and I literally know all three pieces: the Rachmaninoff Prelude in G minor, the Moonlight Sonata in C sharp minor, and Clearly the Loon. Those are the only three pieces I've ever heard Keith Raniere play. Um, but it's like he plays them very sloppily. They're very out of time. Like and like I don't want to come off as an
Mhm.
elitist because I really am not. Like
Yep.
I actually like love kind of like um authentic music that doesn't have like technique or is like playing in like a
Yeah.
sloppy way. I love that music, but there's something that just made it clear that he's completely inauthentic with his
Hmm.
musicality. It's like he learned three things, like he probably learned some psychology terms and like just uses those to manipulate people. But um anyways, I guess so you had a
Hmm.
question about the multifaceted piece of the concert or
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's kind of hard to know, I guess, where to start, but I
yeah.
think I want to give some context for the people who haven't seen it yet, which they should hopefully go see it. You said it's out for the next
Yeah,
week
it's on
on film?
soapboxgallery.com for the next excuse me, for the next week. And then I should be receiving the video files as
Okay,
well, and we'll
that's
be
what I
putting
was
them
going
up.
to ask.
But yeah.
Okay, great.
And it was an album release party. I just had a double album drop called Laeh Su Tel. The first part one is called Psychology in a New Key, and the second part is A Healing Sound for the People. And then the way to just explain what the album is, it's political music from all continents except Antarctica. But it's political music from all continents. And I wanted to be able to pull them out of my memory, be just very familiar with the music, that I could pull them out of my memory and just play them. But the other piece is that I'm a New York jazz player as well as a contemporary classical player, and the way that jazz works, kind of on a basic structure, is at its basic root, you play what we call standards or like regular tunes, which is like everybody learns these tunes, and they're like
Hmm.
classic songs from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, goes all the way up to contemporary day. But The way that jazz works is you play the piece of music, you improvise through it, then everybody takes turns soloing, and then you return to the piece when it
Okay.
feels complete. It actually helps make hip hop make a lot of sense. The way that people put verses out, it's actually very much the same
Hmm.
culture. Like if you watch Charlie Parker or Thelonious Monk or Miles Davis, you'll see a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
hip
yeah.
hop the way they're emceeing.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to do that concept, but musically, I wanted it to be a lot more loose. I didn't want to stay in time. I didn't want to stay in genre. I just wanted to go wherever it took me. And um, it's been really interesting because the last couple years, so my roots are um, classical music and like as an improviser, definitely an avant-garde improviser as well as like a neo-romantic improviser. So what that would mean is that I tend to do more experimental things, but I also have like
Okay.
this very big heartthrob, like romantic inside of me. Like it's like
Mm.
always like, oh, just like drama. Um,
I think I
I
witnessed that in you, the feeling of the music
oh
with the
yeah,
performance watching you.
it's very
It's
dramatic.
nice. It was
But
great to watch. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's like where my roots are. And I should clarify, I'm initially self-taught. So I learned music
Oh,
at age
cool.
4 on it's a little complicated because my mom was a piano teacher and my family was a musical
Okay.
family. So I was around music all the time, but I really did not have formalized lessons. I had like lesson here, every couple months with my mom sometimes.
Hmm.
But so that's actually I didn't really learn how to read music until I was 19, which
Wow.
yeah, that was like a struggle when I first got to college for music.
Yeah.
Then I dropped out of college and joined the army, and then left the army and went to school for music therapy. And it 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 was just kind of an interesting thing of uh, I've been playing here in New York and have this like pretty deep deep vocabulary, musical vocabulary. But in the last 5 years, I've been making music with, people from the street, people from um, just different backgrounds. Like one of my favorite life lessons I ever learned from my kids in the music therapy world at the juvenile center was I was doing a beat, just like and like they were freestyling over it, and I started to do the jazz musician thing where it was like started to vary it, make it a little more interesting. And they literally were like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you listen to the fucking lyrics, dude. Like, listen to the fucking lyrics. And it was like, oh my God, I am not listening to the lyrics. And it was eye-opening. And
Wow. The
yeah, and so,
conversation. Yeah.
yeah, well, and like they said it exactly as they said it. Like,
Yeah.
um, it's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And and it was like, oh, and I didn't. It like didn't. It was not going to be an argument that I won either. Where it was like, well, actually, in New York City, when you're in the avant-garde improvisational scene, it's really interesting to have variation, and development and blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
but anyways, uh, so I've really kind of found that the music that I kind of have been balancing in between the last 5 years has been all the like the like sort of like artistic expression music, but then I've also been really learning and experiencing vernacular music or music of the people. And the way that I explain it to people is like I'll use hip hop as an example. It's an expressive piece of art when somebody creates an album or somebody like constructs like a whole song or a whole verse, where it's a vernacular art form when it's like the people in the street beatboxing and freestyling, or like the block parties that you see on the street. Like
Hmm.
those would be like vernacular versions of hip hop. And hip hop's that's just a contemporary version of this, but it
Yeah.
happens in every culture where there's like some kind of like enlightened musician role that it gets complicated when we look at cross-cultural experiences, but there tends to be people who are like what we would call like musically gifted,
Hmm.
but every human is a musical being, meaning that like and maybe 98%, you know, like there might be a small percentage that does not work with, but
Hmm.
we as a species, when we hear music, we move to it. Or we as a species, when we hear music
Hmm.
we don't like, we have an aversion to it.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of really interesting things about that. And all right, I'll give this here. This is actually, this will get a little deeper into some of the thought processes.
Hmm.
So in music, when you get formally trained in music, we learn about the basic. By the way, I have not talked about music in a while. This is great.
I love it. I love
This
it. I'm
is actually,
soaking it up.
this is, yeah, holy
Fascinating
crap.
to me.
Yeah. So when we talk about music and its basic elements, we talk about rhythm, we talk about harmony, we talk about melody, we talk about timbre, we talk about dynamics, we talk about volume. Well, volume and dynamics are kind of the same thing. But we talk about all like sonically based things. We talk about form, like if something's a song form or something's 32 bars or something's
Hmm.
verse chorus bridge chorus chorus, or something's sonata form, or something's free form. Like free form
Hmm.
is a form because there is no form, but you're
Yeah.
still a
Yeah.
human. It has to be a form.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think about it very similarly to how we talk. It's like you might not literally speak in complete sentences all the time, or you're
Hmm.
gonna have like you're gonna have all those sorts of things when you speak, and we do that with music, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Me too.
um yeah, so the thing about vernacular music that I have really learned is that the many cultures, specifically, there were some gentlemen I met from Ghana who taught me some of this. Uh, but there is oftentimes in the villages, and I don't want people to be racist and classist and have the ridiculous like no technology concept of an African village. It's like it's a modern village, but it's called a village, and
Hmm.
it's still following a lot of the structures that the villages have ran through. So like there are oftentimes royalty in these villages. And when we think of royalty, we think of like the European monarch system. It's a
Hmm.
little
Yeah.
different in these
Okay.
village settings. And so some of the kings or the queens are like the master drummers. And one thing that's really interesting about
Hmm.
in these cultures, versus like the culture that you and I live in, and that's a broad statement, but in
Yeah.
our world we tend to have performers on a stage, or performers on a TV, or
Yeah.
performers on an album, and an
Very
audience.
controlled,
Yeah,
westernized. Yeah.
yeah, and like you know, very much like you're watching a performance.
Yeah.
And whereas in more of a village setting, there is the master drummer, but also the 5-year-old percussionist participates,
Mm.
and everybody is involved with it. So like um, that's just a concept that I've really taken into account. But the
Mhm.
biggest piece about this that I've been really exploring and learning about is a lot of people in a lot of cultures consider choreography and lyrics as musical elements as well as rhythm
Mm.
and harmony and melody. And it's been very eye-opening because you know, I mean, you've been in my music therapy groups, like we do lyric reading,
Mhm.
and so
Mhm.
I've really gotten to learn and see lyrics in real time with lots of people, you know, like
Mhm.
lots of demographics, and I just really started to learn how important lyrics are, and that us as professional musicians have a very big disservice of not studying music or lyrics.
Mm. Mhm.
And this is common. I've
Mhm.
talked to many I mean, I'm one of them, to like where you listen to the music, you are so into music, you learn everything you can about your instrument, and then like somebody shows you a song and you're like, I don't really know how to hear lyrics. Like I've heard a
Yeah.
lot of people say
Yeah.
that,
I
myself.
I get that. Mhm.
Yeah, and so studying lyricism, like you start to realize like there's a whole other thing going on, because lyrics, like for instance, like fa la 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 is a lyric. or
Hmm.
like I'll do a really ridiculous one, 90s new metal, but you're not too rusty.
Yeah.
That's from Korn.
Hmm.
Like that's a
That's
lyric.
pretty good.
Yeah, these are nonsense, these are nonsense
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
syllables, or like even scat
yeah,
singing. We that do that da.
yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and so the point is that lyrics are not just simply words, and they're not just
Yeah.
simply poetry. It's actually something about the words being supported through some kind of sonic like expression and
Hmm.
some kind of undercurrent pulse that
Hmm.
is doing some kind of deep human expression. And when you think about it, like if we go into like Noam Chomsky,
Hmm.
his entire argument against behavioralism was that we have an inherent ability to speak languages. Every human does. Even people
Yep.
who are, trapped in a closet, like born in a closet and like left in a
Yep.
dungeon for like 14 years and never learn how to speak any language that we might recognize, but they still communicate. And also language
Absolutely.
is not just the words we use. We have like
Hmm.
the way we move our uh, faces, our body language, the
Yeah.
relationship, the dynamics, the misunderstandings, like the event that I'm not going to mention on the podcast, but I told you about right before this, where
Yes.
somebody just literally misunderstood something and
Hmm.
responded in a way that, yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's just something about lyrics that's very connected to our humanness. And so I've really started to try to think about telling a story as if I'm literally telling a story like I talk. And one,
That's what it felt like. I was
yeah,
like, listening and
yeah,
watching you.
yeah,
It felt like we were having a conversation, and it felt very intimate, like that's how I was getting to know you, and you were, kind of prompting and guiding us. Okay, let's go look over here. Let's go over here.
mm-hmm,
And it was very, it was telling me a lot that I'm still processing, and
mm,
I want to go back and keep listening. So I'm grateful to have access to your album.
yeah,
But yeah, it was very much everything you're saying, because it didn't need verbal, specifics of dialogue of English language, but it was saying a lot. So I wonder
mm-hmm,
how, like, so when you are applying that through piano, um, as opposed to something like coming out like a scat or what have you, is that the
mm-hmm.
same concept of it
Yeah,
coming through that vehicle?
let me put
Okay.
it like completely precisely. When you are working on phrasing with no lyrics, like when you're working on improvisational phrasing, one thing that can happen, especially as a piano player, because we don't have to breathe, like a trumpet player has to breathe, a clarinet
Mm-hmm.
player has to breathe. But instruments where it's physical, like um, physical connection that makes the sound, piano, drums, any of those instruments, you can accidentally get caught in phrasing with no spaces, so you can and you can literally do that forever.
Yeah.
And so the thing that hip hop specifically, like Biggie Smalls actually taught me, and what came out I think a lot in this, is that his rhythm is like completely sophisticated and completely like in the
Mm.
pocket and all of this, but the phrasing is also shaped by the literal sentences that he's spelling. Like one of my favorite lyrics he has is in Machine Gun Funk. He says, "What is this relentless approach to know if I'm broke or not? Just because I joke and smoke a lot. Don't mean I
Mm.
don't tote the Glock. 16 shots from my fellas in the pen until we motherfucking meet again." So what happens in that is
Wow.
he completely flips where the rhyme is, and all of a sudden the phrase is uneven. And Biggie, if y'all didn't know, Biggie did
Mm.
study music. He had a neighbor who's a jazz
Oh,
saxophonist and drummer, and Biggie used to go and hang, and they'd listen to Elvin Jones and listen to Miles Davis, and
that's so cool.
yeah. So it's like
It makes sense
yeah, yeah.
because
Um,
even you just sharing those lyrics and that phrasing, like, and you said you commenting on the switching, like it's still so smooth, like
mhm.
it's not jarring at all. It's so sophisticated, and the pocket, like you're saying, like it just Yeah, it makes sense then.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally, and he's like the genius of geniuses in that kind of like
Excuse me.
flow oriented phrasing. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
but yeah, oh yeah, go ahead. So I don't know, did that answer the question?
What was the question?
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned like the pocket, and so I think the improv part of it, the free form of that, like
Mhm.
is pretty impactful because we're not used to that. Again, we're used to more controlled delivery of our experiences with music and performance. So you had the improvisation that was recorded and captured on the album itself, but then at the
Mhm.
performance as well, you had some bases, but you were still moving into
Yeah.
improvisation through the
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you um, stay in that pocket? How do you not veer off somewhere and just keep going? And how do you stay true to, coming back to the essence of and what you want to communicate and honor about that protest song that you chose and their message?
Mm,
Is there some kind of
mm.
formula, or is it some kind of like feeling that you follow?
I
Um,
mean, it's at this point it's very intuitive. Like it's because I've been playing piano since, I mean, 35 years. And so I don't really remember some of the early breakthroughs. I don't remember when I figured out what an A was or a G was. Like I have no recollection of that. Um, but that all being said, well, there's a Charlie Parker quote. It's learn everything you can and then forget it all, or something like that.
mhm,
And you know, I treat it like a language, and I mean it is a language that's a part of my communication approach to something.
mhm,
Um, and I mean, let's say I'll give a horrible example for anybody who's ever worked in a call center. Um,
oh, I have.
but yeah, so yeah. So
Ugh,
if you worked in a call center, you get your script and you can follow
mhm,
the script precisely. But
yeah,
they're like the people who are really good at like sales, which I was not. Like they like use that as sort of the outline, but they can freeform. They'll like follow a conversation with the
exactly.
person. So it is
Yeah.
that same exact thing. I'm just like not I'm not concerned about where it goes at this point. And there's a lot of background that can give insights into why it might come off so fluid. And to be super frank, I mean, like, yes, I do love the piano and I
Mhm,
do feel a deep connection to it. But I will say that I've just been fortunate for a couple of experiences. Like my day job in New York for the longest time, I still do it, is dance accompanying, which is you improvise every class, whether it's ballet, dance, or modern dance. I don't play traditional
mhm,
repertoire, and you have to
right.
improvise in many, many styles. Like if I'm playing somebody who's a traditional ballet dancer, I have to play very like Tchaikovsky-esque
Mhm,
music.
mhm.
Whereas like I've done like straight up electronic drone music with Doug
Cool.
Verone, or like um I played for
You're at the
Martha
Martha
Graham
Graham
School.
school? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
that's like
I used
very
to I
like,
used to dance Martha Graham, and my mom
oh,
did. My mom met and danced with Martha Graham,
oh
so
wow.
I know that's a bit more like has some more staccato in it. Is that
Oh
like?
yes, yes, yes. Well,
Yeah,
and yeah,
very
like
cool.
Graham technique is very like early 20th century piano
Mhm,
music. Whereas like somebody like Mark Morris or somebody like Doug Verone, like it's a little more contemporary. But even then, it's like all of those folks are like in their 70s and 80s now. So, uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it just it's so that's a piece of it that I've had literally. I mean, I've been playing for dance classes since 2009, pretty regularly. So I've
Wow.
had that experience.
Would you also say that because of your just early life and
Mhm.
childhood, just learning piano on your own before you could read music and,
Hmm.
kind of box in your imagination and what you could do, and you were playing with everything, probably composing and
Yeah.
exploring. Does that give you a comfort, like a sense of being home and more of that improvisation as opposed to it being challenging as it would be for a lot of other people?
Every breakup I ever had in my life had at least 1 hour long sob session of me improvising at the piano. So, um, every breakup that I've ever had in my existence has had that in there somewhere. Yeah, I've now been married for a while, and um, so I have not experienced that in a long time. But
Hmm.
and I also was with my wife for a while prior to becoming married, so um, yeah, so that has not happened in a long time, but I have
Hmm.
definitely used the piano as a place of like exploring my grief or my anger or
Hmm.
my happiness even, like I get literal like chills when I play certain things. Like you get like a
Hmm.
feeling, like a it's if
Yeah.
you're are you familiar with the term synesthesia?
No.
Synesthesia, the most like common example is like people who hear a sound and they see a color. So they might like
Oh, okay. Yes.
hear like a pitch and they see green. I actually knew
Yeah.
somebody who was uh what's the term for somebody who can't see? Blind, but I don't use the word. But
Um,
yeah, I had a blind colleague
mhm.
who saw colors when they heard sound.
Mm,
That was all the way back in college, the first time I went. But I have synesthesia to a degree, and it's I get very physical sensations in my body.
mhm,
And I've just kind of always been that way. Part of it's,
mhm,
it's just I think that I was wired kind of a certain way. But I also think a lot of people are wired in lots of different ways. And
mhm.
uh, yeah. So, um,
It's really nice to be around that where it gives permission for that because, so much masking can happen in attempts to control that, even
yeah,
though it comes to you regardless.
yeah,
So even having that to witness just from that album
hmm
release,
hmm
there were so many layers in terms of how it
yeah,
impacted me watching it and listening. But like you're saying, touching into like different healing aspects of it,
hmm
it was like it was informing me with some like aspects of catharsis and my own kind of releases that I didn't quite know what were happening logically, but were affecting me just by through the performance of the music and watching
So
you go through
so
that.
there's actually two other pieces that definitely had an influence on just the improvisational skill or like the just like doing it regularly. But there's a very absurd opera from the 1980s called Perfect Lives by a composer named Robert Ashley. It
Okay.
is only text, there is no music, and you follow the text. And there was a revitalization, like a redo of it, that came out in 2013. I was the pianist for it, and it's 7 acts long because it was originally put on public access television in the 80s. It's very
Yeah.
trippy, like it's a very weird opera. It's very, very weird. But the two main characters are Raoul, who's a lounge singer, and he's the one who's speaking, and then Buddy, the world's most amazing piano player, who was originally played by a famous jazz piano player named Blue Jean Tyranny. He has since passed away. He was a mentor of mine, but anyways, I got to play that gig, and literally we did one marathon concert of it once where it was 7 hours, and um
Wow.
yeah, and I don't even know how to explain the psychology of what happened when like playing for seven
Hmm.
hours. It was a marathon concert. It was like one of those very New York City things, like people could
Yeah.
drop in and like watch it as it was going. But
Hmm.
because it was all improvisational, myself and the person who was doing the new updated vocals, we had a lot of like sort of symbolic areas to go. Like for instance, it would be like this part is the E flat esoteric, whatever that means. Like, but we would kind of
Go.
know. Yeah, well, but it like it kind of I knew like sort of a sound environment to go into, if that
Yeah,
makes any
okay.
sense. And so
Hmm.
the template was the same for
Hmm.
the whole piece every time we played it, but the actual like music within the template has been different every
Hmm.
time. So
Okay,
that's the second
makes sense.
experience. And then
Hmm.
I've got a third experience that I think really impacted it. And there's a form of music therapy. It's there's some research on it, but it's called environmental music therapy. And I actually got trained in it when I was doing my internship at Mount Sinai. And what it is the concept behind it is changing the meaning of sounds. So a lot of people, when they're in a hospital, they get triggered by hearing the beeps, by hearing the, you know,
Yeah.
all those things. And so
Hmm.
environmental music therapy is to actually like pay attention to those beeps and like play things along with it. And so I literally, part of my internship, I had a gig where I played environmental music therapy in like the big hall at Mount Sinai on Union Square.
Wow.
And it was like I'll tell you one very specific incident. And I'll give you one last piece of info too, but the specific incident, I was playing outside of the radiology office, or like whatever, you know, the cancer area where radiology happens. And a woman came out and she just sat next to the piano and just sat for like 25 minutes. And then
Mhm.
she stood up and she was like, that music was healing. I needed that. Thank you for making my day better. And I was just like, oh my God,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
because I don't know what she was in for, but she definitely came out of radiology. But then the
Mhm.
other piece, and this will be my last comment on it, part of my composer background is just knowing about some of the specific things that pop up in like experimental music and research. And so there's a composer named Lamont Young who basically his whole like theory of how he creates music is he tunes everything to 120 hertz or 60 hertz. And that's the pitch is somewhere between a B flat and an A natural. Um, it's not precise on the piano, but like a wind instrument can play that precise of the pitch. But the reason why he tunes all of his music to 120 hertz or 60 hertz is because the argument is that that's the frequency of electricity, and contemporary society has a constant buzz of
Mhm.
electricity. And
Yep.
so the tonic center, the tonal center of Western culture or of modern culture is 120 hertz or 60 hertz. And I'll tell you an experience. I went to a concert of his once where he played for 4 hours on a specially tuned piano. And when you leave and you're on the subway, you like hear the subway in a
Mm.
very different, like you're very in tune with it. So
Yeah.
I
Wow.
often play with that knowledge. I often, when I do the environmental music therapy, I use a lot of open chords and a lot of space chords that fit on B flat or A because it resonates
Okay.
with the environment. And so I think that those
Fascinating.
experiences of like playing music not to be
Hmm.
impressive, but literally to create a space for people to feel safe, that
Yeah.
actually has impacted a lot. And
A
that's
lot,
that's
a lot
probably
has
the
been
newest
pointing you
addition.
towards like healing
Yeah,
things, like
yeah,
so it
yeah,
just made sense that you went uh,
yeah,
eventually into music therapy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. So there's a lot going on.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
this is like I know you're not like consciously thinking about it, but you have it in you and
I
it's
mean, I'm
affecting you.
aware of it too. Like I am aware of
Yeah.
it. Just because I'm not
Yeah.
consciously thinking of it, I can definitely explain stuff that's going
Yeah.
on. Um, yeah,
Think this is why I was interested. I'm like, I know there, it's so complex and nuanced, even though I can't, see it or explain it clearly.
there's a great composer and improviser named Ornette Coleman. He's literally the father of free jazz, which is
Mhm.
structureless jazz. It came out in the
Mhm.
1960s. I forget the year. No, 1959. And his first album is called The Shape of Jazz to Come. It's two bass players, two drummers, a saxophone, and a trumpet, and they just play for 40 minutes, and it's great. and um, and uh, I'll just give you like one example. I was in a history of jazz class in college, and the teacher played some Ornette Coleman, and it sounds, it's like
Mhm. Yeah.
like it's just all over the place. And one of the
Yeah.
students who was like, taking an elective, not a music major, not definitely not like a free jazz enthusiast, raised their hand and they were like, "Why would anyone ever do that ever?" And it was,
I think a lot of
and
people say that.
yeah, and the teacher had a
Yeah.
great response. He went, "Why did we climb Mount Everest? It was there." And he was like, "Human
I know.
beings." He's like, "I've heard lots of music. I've heard, so many things. I like to hear something that, gives my ears something new to explore. And like, just because I might not listen to it for enjoyment, there's other things that you can listen to it for." Um,
That's true.
yeah, and so
I
the
can
reason,
just think of like different musicians that were you can when you follow them over a career, you can, hear those points where they're exploring those terrains for different reasons. It's not
yeah,
for, money and concerts. It's like a totally different reason.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Well, and so the thing about Ornette Coleman, he has a philosophy that he followed called harmolatics, and he created harmolatics because he is Ornette Coleman. It is, of course, the vaguest thing. Like, there's no like real like written theory or anything about harmolatics, but it's a mindset, and the way he explains
Mhm.
it is so like you and me, we're having a conversation, and we are talking, but there's also sounds outside. We're also breathing. You also have your thoughts. We're also walking, like not right now, but like let's say we're on the street
Yeah.
and we were walking, having a conversation. There's lots of things going on besides just communicating with the words
Hmm.
towards each other, and therefore every situation is unique just by nature that you're in a different room, you're in a different time period, you're with different people, you're at a different moment. And so that's really
Yeah.
what he was exploring. Another piece about Ornette Coleman that's beautiful is he like did the shoe shining thing to get his first saxophone. He had no idea what to get. He ended up buying a cheap plastic saxophone, which ended up becoming his main instrument, and people made fun of him for it. For like, it was like, bro, you need a brass saxophone. Like, what's this plastic nonsense? And like, that actually is part of his sound. Like, it's like, that's my instrument.
Yeah.
That's the one I grew up
Yeah.
with. Like, yeah. So, but he has a quote. He has a quote that I actually keep it around my music therapy stuff. If I can find it, but it's see if I got it. Maybe I don't have it in here, but anyways, it's like music serves a lot of purposes, but I think its greatest quality is one of a healing quality, something like
Mhm.
that. And it just yeah, there's a lot about Ornette Coleman who really has been a major influence just internally, because just the way he thinks about things. Like, there's a really great interview where like a lot of the jazz scene had kind of written him off as like sort of an idiot.
Yeah.
And Cannonball Adderley, who amazing alto saxophone player on Kind of Blue, which is Miles Davis's like groundbreaking album. Cannibal Adderley was doing like writing for jazz magazines, and so he went to interview Ornette Coleman just to see what he was all about. And he was like, he basically learned that Ornette Coleman not only was aware of what he was doing, but was actually listening to everybody's music and was one of the most
Mm-hmm.
educated on the whole art form of anybody he had met. Cannonball like was saying this,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's like, y'all, he's choosing to do this. Like, he's making a
Yeah. It's
point for
not
some
just,
reason.
yeah.
And his respect level really started to go up when Ornette or when Cannonball defended him, because it was like he's playing this oddball stuff because he's trying to get all of us to think differently. And
Yeah.
and
I
and so
respect that. Yeah.
yeah, and
Totally.
so that's definitely been like just a root in my musical DNA. Yeah.
How does that then, if you go back to like where you were first conceptualizing this album and like
Mhm.
starting to explore it, like how did that those parts weave into like the political aspects you were exploring and even going
Oh,
into cults and studying those things?
oh man, oh man. Oh, well, Okay. I think as a human, I was always interested in um devious behavior or like people who were involved in complex things. Like I had serial killer books when I was growing up. I had gangster, like mafia books. I
Hmm.
had cult leader books actually. Which,
There's
yeah,
probably a
that
lot
one.
of them.
Ooh, ooh. Yeah, that
Yeah.
one, that one. Yeah, I did not get as close to serial killers and mobsters as I have with cult leaders. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no gangbangers though. I have gotten a lot of gangbangers, but just not
Hmm.
mafia specific.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think I was always kind of interested in those sorts of things. And
Hmm.
like I've always been a fan of horror movies and like visceral responses to things, and I think there's something very
Like
psychological.
psychology of, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
very like I was always drawn to. I mean, even as a kid, it was like Nightmare on Elm Street was my jam, and that's like very philosophical, very psychological. Um, yeah, and so so I think I do have just kind of a knack for being
Hmm.
interested in those sorts of things. The argument that I think I can say that it's like my interest is it started off as like a morbid curiosity, but the more I learned, I'm a very empathetic person, and I think it just started to become more apparent what what these emotions really mean inside of certain people, just on an
Hmm.
intuitive nature. But so anyways, like when I really liked theatrical things. Like I had like when I was a kid wanted to be a movie director. So I've always been into kind of the theatrical thing. I never went to film school, never. I think I made like five movies when I was like 10, like but and one of them is called Car Wars. And it is yeah, instead of Darth Vader, it's Dodge Viper. It's Fluke Skyscraper. Instead of
Oh,
Yoda, we had a can of Coke and named it Soda.
oh
It's
my
very
gosh,
good.
that sounds amazing. I
Yeah,
would love
it
to see that.
was excellent. But yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, anyways, I kind of always have been drawn towards the psychological things. But fast forward, ended up going to school for music. When I was in music school, I was like completely obsessed with avant-garde music and jazz music. Like I was
Okay.
very into experimental music and I was very into improvisational music. Um, and my school was interesting because they didn't have a jazz program. I think they do now, but they didn't at the time. They had a jazz band, but not a jazz program. And so I got asked to be in the band to play piano for the big band because all the other students were like classical pianists.
Hmm.
And so because I had experience improvising, I got to play in the band and just like learned so much just doing all of that. But then also learned how to compose, learned how to read music, had learned all of those things, and really learned how to be not a session player because that's not really the route I went, but I just learned how to be a professional in school, like how to play
Hmm.
things and how to read music and how to listen to things and how to dissect what you're hearing so you can recreate it and things like that. Um, but around it's a little complex if you're trying to follow the lineage because I was in the military the same time I was in college, and I was also no, sorry, I was in the military for a semester of college before I dropped out, and I was also in the military the first part of me living in New York. So it just in case
Okay.
people are confused about the overlap, because I was National
Okay.
Guard when I was in New York, so I was
Okay.
still military, still going, and doing service and all of that, but also living in the city and doing this thing. But yeah,
That's an interesting part where I can piece
yeah.
together other parts of your life, and I'm like, how did
Hmm.
you get there and why? I think that's
Well,
probably another
I'll
story,
tell
but
you exactly. My roommate was in the military in college, and he was a saxophonist and guitar player. And he was like, "Bro, they pay your student loans off." And I was like, "What?"
reason enough.
And
There you go.
all of a sudden I was at basic training. Like, what the fuck did I sign
Mm,
up for? Like, I mean, I'm
yeah.
kind of joking. Like, I actually really enjoyed basic training, and it gives you a lot of life experience. Like,
Hmm.
you just meet everybody. Like, it's like you're with like there was a rich prep school kid that got forced to join the army from his dad. And there was like a dude from Detroit, you know, like from
Mhm.
inner city Detroit, and like there were lots of hillbillies around, and like you just all of a sudden you're in the same
Mhm.
nonsense, like like
Yeah.
and um but anyways, when I was in the military, do you remember the Michael Brown murder, police shooting? You're
No.
from the other country, so I don't know if it was as big of a story for y'all when it happened. But in
No.
2013, Michael Brown was an unarmed black man who was murdered by an officer. I believe he was shot 6 times, and it was just he was 18 years old, and I was not politically like conscious at this point in time. Like, in fact, my political consciousness was actually like more aligned with like libertarian values,
Mhm.
which that's an embarrassing thing to process through now. But man, oh man, every
Gotta
left
own it.
wing,
It's okay.
yeah, every left wing army veteran I know is like, yeah, you went through a libertarian phase. It's like, yeah, it's like we're all embarrassed by it. It's very, yeah, it's a very shameful thing. Well, because
That's
it's like a
hilarious.
lot of people in the military come from conservative backgrounds, but if you're not
Yeah.
actually conservative and you hear people who say they're conservative, but they're anti-war and anti-war on drugs, like you go,
Mhm.
oh, great. You just don't realize that they're also directly tied to white supremacist movements. And
Oops.
yeah.
Yep.
But when Michael Brown was murdered, I was in the military, and it was shocking to me that it was even in a debate on what had happened. It was like they shot the dude 6 times. Like
Mhm.
you don't do that. Like no
Mhm.
matter what he was doing, like he didn't have a weapon. Like you don't do that. And I was
Yeah.
shocked by the response from people in my personal circle who were just completely defending the cops. And it
Yeah.
was I'll give you a prime example. There was Tamir Rice, who was the 12-year-old who was playing with a toy gun in Cleveland, Ohio, and the police thought it was a real gun, drove up and just shot him, killed him. 12-year-old. This happened in Ohio when I was living in Ohio, so I was talking to people in my family who are in Ohio, and my brother and I, who are on the same page regarding this issue, we're like, this is disgusting. Like the police
Mhm.
killed a child. Like they just killed a child, and they're just getting away with it. Like I'm not like, and
Mhm.
even at the time it was like, I'm not saying it's like premeditated murder, but like this is an abuse.
Yeah.
Like this is crazy. And a
Yeah.
person in my family literally responded with, well, sometimes things are hard with the, and like just started to do that. And so my brother literally was like, how would you feel if named our nephew? How would you feel if that happened? Person in the
Yeah.
family literally went, I would understand the complications of the, and it was like,
Yeah.
no, you fucking wouldn't.
No, no,
No, you
you
would
would
not.
not.
I know you. I've seen you in other
Absolutely not.
circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, that was kind of my first, like, what the actual fuck,
Mm.
like, and I'll admit it was I was embarrassed to figure that out. So because I was like 25 at the time, but it was embarrassing to like start to just see whiteness and blackness and what that actually meant, and like how structured it was, and um just started.
Those can be like kind of like cults getting out of cult moments, when
Yeah.
you have this, it's like the moral injury kind of thing, like you just have
Mhm.
this completely clear response to something, an injustice,
Yeah.
which can happen also like on a different level if you're neurodivergent.
Hmm.
Um, and then that contrast is so stark with the people around you or in a certain group, like you're saying with
Hmm.
military or what have you, that it just jars you, like it shakes you out of some kind of veil that was previously there.
I just found it so disturbing that people I knew so well just completely justified the murder of a child that had
Yeah.
literally happened like an hour away from we grew up, like where we lived. It was like this,
Yeah.
y'all are crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
And who are you?
yeah, it's like this
Yeah.
does not make any, and like the fact that not only did you justify it, but when asked about your own family member, you like lied to yourself. Like, it's like you're
Mhm.
telling a lie to yourself because the structure is so stuck the way it is. And so
Mhm.
there was just something about, at that moment in time, I just felt like even though my platform's extremely small, like I'm an avant-garde improvising piano player and dance accompanist in New York City, not exactly, an Usher or a Kanye West or something like that.
Yeah.
But I still had a following. I had a small social media following. Like I had like 5,000 followers at the time on Facebook. and and which, yeah,
What are you gonna say,
that world.
MySpace?
Oh yeah. Oh no, no, no. This is actually, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
but it was just one of those things where all my music started to become political. It was
Mm-hmm.
intentionally based around pushing a message, spreading a message, or connecting with community. Um, a
Okay.
buddy of mine from the military was like, bro, I'm a music therapist, and he's a music therapist in the VA in New
Mm.
Jersey. He showed me some things that he did with veterans, and it was like amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then became a music therapist, and also
Hmm.
uh during that time also like you know got real into radical politics. And like I mean the radical politics I think had started with Michael Brown, like where
Okay.
and actually like it's funny because there's a big thing with military members coming out and they're like anarchists because they're so anti-government because they just worked for the
Hmm.
worst part of the government. And um and so and that was totally me too. Like you're just it's like I do not want to follow orders. I do not want to
Yeah.
like I don't want to like play
Hmm.
piano for somebody who just murdered like some kids. I don't want to play piano for somebody who was just murdered by, the opposite side. Like it's like I don't want to do this anymore. Um
Hmm.
and it ended up becoming important to use the platform, and then ended up going back to school, music therapy. And it was, I'll tell you, the struggle was the struggle of becoming a music therapist or learning how to become a music therapist was when you're a composer or when you're like an artist per se. The way I describe it is you're trying to find the music deep within yourself and express it outward. Whereas when
Hmm.
you're a music therapist, you're trying to find the music within others and pull it out of them.
Hmm.
So that was very hard for me to not
Hmm.
put myself in. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then I'll just say
Beautiful
last
though.
last but not least was ended up getting a job at Rikers Island and met DeMarisa. And DeMarisa just like which you know her now, but she really did just like she taught me how to talk to people like inside. Like just even little things. Like she walks into a room and she goes, "How's it going, gentlemen?" She just says that out loud and people say, "What's up?" Then you don't have to be awkward and say hi. Like she's like, just say it. Don't even worry about it. They're not even paying
Mhm.
attention. So then I just go, "What's up?" They go, "Yo." like, and
That's it.
but like when I first started working, I was totally awkward. The first little bit, and like just I
Yeah. Yeah.
really, DeMarisa, though we were coworkers, she really ended up being a teacher in so many ways. I mean, continues to be a teacher. And then we got fired together because she was getting racially profiled and I was getting harassed for standing up for her, and then we lost our positions. So
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And when I lost that job, I ended up reading Yanya Lalich's book,
Ah,
the Take
okay.
Back Your Life. So it was like, and that was literally like, oh wait a second, like I've seen this behavior so much, like this is gang behavior. Like
So, what made you want to open that book, like in
I was
terms?
watching documentaries on my time off,
Okay.
and I was a big like at the time I was doing tons of audiobooks, and
Hmm.
I was like going through, I mean, like memoirs, psychology textbooks, and just like sociology and theory and like economic books. I was just trying to like all the stuff I hadn't learned in school because I was like a
Hmm.
very poor student and also would not have learned these things this way anyways, but was just really trying to learn about things, like learned about trauma, learned about
Yeah.
because we learn like psychotherapy and psychoanalytical techniques and behavioralism and neurological music therapy and like we learn all those things, but trauma therapy hadn't really been explored in music therapy yet. um
Okay.
and yeah,
Huh.
and then the big, and I mean this like I'm just going to say it this way, but the big contribution I think I'm giving to the music therapy community is the pushing in the liberation psychology element of things. And
Mm.
the biggest piece about liberation psychology that I kind of emphasize is that when we think about psychology and we think about like the unconscious or like what's going on inside your inner being, liberation psychology does not reject that theory. It still keeps that as very much a like a theory of consciousness that we follow as kind of human beings and professionals who study the mind. But uh, there's sorry, just why do I always lose my train of thought? Studying the mind, studying the mind, studying the mind. Oh, liberate, yeah. So liberation psychology, it is about the social theory, and meaning that you have to meet people where they're at, and you have to be community minded first. And the way you do that is you have to participate in the community that you are actually working with. And like, there's some like really like obvious things. Like if you work in a neighborhood, go to the deli in the neighborhood when you're on your break. Like talk to the person that works there. Like if you have like Shazam or Soundhound or any of those apps that you can learn music, I always Shazam things and just learn music for anywhere. Like it's like if I'm in a Puerto Rican neighborhood and there's like some ridiculous salsa music going on, like I'm gonna find out what it is and listen to it later.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
okay. I do
yeah,
similar.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and so the biggest thing
So
about
you were
liberation,
already ingesting like this kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
global scale of music
yeah,
as part of the formula of leading you to
yeah,
your album. Okay.
yeah. And there's also just the thing about the social aspect, and I try to emphasize it like this, and this might actually be able to lead us into some cultic talk, because no amount of trauma exercises, no amount of somatic experiencing or EMDR is going to protect you if you are in an abusive environment or an unsafe environment. Like
Yeah.
there are people really do not understand how serious the jail scene is and the prison scene, where it's like okay, I want you to try to thought experiment this. You won't be able to understand it because this is
Yeah.
so heavy, like that you can literally only experience this to truly understand it. But it's like imagine you have no parents. Your dad was locked up when you were born. Your mother, you were taken away from your mother, also because some kind of addiction issue. I'm just talking about kind of a generalized experience. This is
Yep.
people in poverty living in the projects. They
Yep.
go through the foster program. You have to fight for everything. Like I've seen fights over the smallest minute things that when you start to learn that they're from the foster program. Like I saw two grown men fight over trays like at the lunch table. And it was like when I learned like what this like the disrespect that the one guy was showing to the other, it made it seem less unreasonable because it was like, well, yeah, like there's social norms that you kind of follow when you're in spaces, and this dude
Yeah.
knew exactly what he was doing. And so from my perspective, I
Yeah.
saw two grown men having a ridiculous fight, but
Yeah.
like there was a
It's
deeper
not
like
just
one
about
of
the
them was
tray.
saying, yeah, one of them was
Yeah.
saying fuck you to the other guy, like
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So you know you just imagine that, and so you now have a community in your place of living in which the community actually does take you in, and you're fucking hot shit. Like you get laid, you get money, you people respect you, you have nice clothes, you walk around like you like literally you can tell gangbangers they always dress nice when they're on the outside. um some of them it's fake, by the way, which some of it is like totally like they've got like three nice things that they've gotten some way. And but anyways, uh so um then you're part of this group, but you're now there's also another group now because you've joined this group. There's another group that is at war with you, and they're actively trying
Yeah.
to kill you or kill members of your group, and you're trying to actively kill those members too. And so this is where it's impossible to imagine because this is a real story. But it's like imagine you're 13 years old and one of your friends gets shot right in front of you. Like you're on the sidewalk, a car just drives up, shoots your friend, pulls off. You saw the guy, you know exactly who he is because you know him, who did it. You get locked up a month later because you kill somebody that was from the opposing gang, and
Hmm.
you saw them on the bus and you had a knife, and the kid literally just like attacked this person. So he's
Hmm.
now in on a charge, and the person who killed his friend is locked up for another situation in the other room. Like, and
Hmm.
they're all locked
Yeah.
up together for a year, sometimes 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, imagine being in a room where you saw somebody murder somebody you know. You murdered somebody because you were so scared and needing to protect yourself, like you're in combat.
Hmm.
And it's just like, it's just these kinds of things where it's like there is a level of stress that I don't know how to emphasize to people. And it's like
Yeah.
no amount of somatic experiencing is going to
No.
like cut that down. So like, so what our job as music therapists in these spaces is it's like we're there to decrease the energy. It's like that's literally what my goal is to keep just the energy down, because it's like I'm not like you can't do behavioral changes. Like it's just too impossible to like
Hmm.
implement. Like there has to be an entire social change. And now that being
Yeah.
said, when you decrease pressure, and I have never successfully gotten this way, just to be very frank with you, due to restrictions and complicated things and gang wars. And the worst part I hate, the thing I hate the most about gang wars is there are people that will leave their gangs and they're done with it, but another gang member doesn't know that and will
Uh,
kill them as like, or like, yeah, like
hmm.
there
Yeah.
I had a gentleman who literally had left his gang, was hanging out with some former members. They got jumped. He killed the other guy. He was out. He was like ready to go to college and everything. And
Yeah.
it's just
Hmm.
awful. But but anyways, it's just it's an impossible amount of stress. And the whole point is when you decrease it, you can then start to implement things. And the model that I'm aiming towards, though this is much, much, much easier said than done, there's an organization called HALA here in New York. They're up in Harlem, stands for How Our Lives Link All Together. They formed the general understanding of what they do is that they formed when they were incarcerated together. It was a group of men. They started a healing justice nonprofit while locked up. But the way that they ended up getting to that spot was they had a culture shift on their dorm. They started saying things like let's not say any curse words, or like let's say thank you to each other. Like, and they just had that little bit of a shift, and everyone healed and everyone got out.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that's like all,
Hmm.
that I've never actually successfully done that as a therapist, but I know that it is possible to do it because I know a group of people that did it. And
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where and Noam Chomsky puts this really great where the hardest part about being a human and studying the social sciences is it's like if we're studying other animals like orca whales or gorillas, like we can study them from afar, but we are the orca whales trying to study ourselves. you
Hmm.
know and so we miss things, we miss some like very
Oh
obvious
yeah.
things because we
Oh
can't
yeah.
even tell. But yeah, so I don't know,
So
did that answer the
does it,
question?
if I remember the question.
Yeah, I think it was
No, I'm just,
how
this
did
is
you
like
get?
me watching your concert. I'm just going
Yeah,
where, let's go over here. What you're doing.
well, I mean,
I'm okay with
but
it.
you see how it literally is just speaking, like this is how I talk
Yeah.
and it's how I play
No,
it literally.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that part of like decreasing the pressure a little bit, meeting
Hmm.
people where they're at, that
Hmm.
is that something that you aspire to and hope? Like if you're wanting people to walk away with something like
Mm.
through the album and the music and that experience, like is
Mm.
that part of it?
I am not sure what I want the results to be for this
Okay.
album. Like this was really an expression project, but that being said, we there are lots of projects that people listen to, lots of pieces of art that were created for the person by Miles Davis was completely self-expression. He's like one of the most influential artists of all time, not just in the jazz world, but just in the music world and just the world at
Yeah.
large. And so I know that I needed to work through some healing, and this was
Okay.
kind of my way to
So it
process
was
it.
first and foremost for you. Yeah.
I was trying to ground myself. I was trying to like find a way to integrate my music therapy life and my composer life.
And this is
The
where you
other,
also said you were becoming a parent,
mhm,
you
mhm.
entered sobriety, some other things transitioning were happening.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, even just like this is going to be a heavy comment. I heard heavy things prior to becoming a music therapist. Like I definitely like I have a cello concerto that's about a series of awful murders that happened in Bangladesh, and I spoke to some of the survivors, like family members of survivors, when I was writing that piece.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to them once. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know how to ask questions like I do now. I didn't really know how to listen like I do now because of therapist training. Um, but so like I had always like kind of heard heavy stuff, like, and just even my own activism was around. I would go into neo-Nazi spaces and far-right fascist spaces to try to figure out what they were all about. Like I would just be a
Yeah.
fly on the wall and just watch what they talk
Mm-hmm.
about, and like
Yeah.
it was so like I was used to being around those sorts of traumas and those sorts of like pieces of heaviness. But the thing about the music therapy stuff, and specifically the three areas I work in, which is hospice, prison, and cults, and
Mm-hmm.
like hospice care, I've seen people die. Like it's awful. Like it's a as it's a beautiful thing, but it was also
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, I
Yeah.
I don't really want to watch another person die. I know I'm going to, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not it's not you have to take care of your body and your mental
Yeah.
health. But then
Yeah.
in the prison world, I mean, you're watching violence everywhere. Like I've seen so many just people are just sitting around chilling, and then all of a sudden a blade comes out and someone just gets cut up like
Mm-hmm.
like oh my god, and you could tell there was like a coordination going, like there was planning, like it was like
Strategy.
they
Yeah.
yeah, it was coordinated, it was a coordinated attack, like
Mm-hmm.
and I've just seen all those sorts of things, and even though
So
there are
we're much more used to like covert violence, and that's
yes,
where we
yes.
exist. Whereas the overt violence of that is the different. Yeah.
Well, well, and then but then in the cult world, it's like I've definitely gotten off of the cult survivor group and like gone and watched a movie with my wife and just been like, yeah, I heard some woman tell in detail about being sex trafficked by their minister as a child. And it's like, I don't know what to do with that information. Like that is a
Yeah.
heinous thing to know. Um,
Yep.
and so and just so everybody knows, I'm slightly changing details to keep it vague so people cannot figure out who I'm talking about. But anyways, the biggest thing was that all of those sorts of things had happened, just the secondary trauma of being around those
Yeah. Secondary
environments.
trauma.
And I
Hmm.
mean, I'll tell you, can I tell you a really specific story about just
Yeah.
how
Please.
trauma I went to go pick my kid up at a playground. She takes lessons, like an after school program, and they were in the playground with like all the kids playing. And I have my own bike, but we also have a car, and we use the car for our daughter. Like whoever has our daughter has the car. That's the rule of our family.
Hmm.
So my wife, when she picks my daughter up from school, will drop my daughter off at like the after school thing, and
Hmm.
then I will take one of the city bikes and ride it to where the car is, and then get my daughter, and then take the car back home. So that way,
Yep.
like, I don't have to bring my bike, don't have to figure
Yeah.
out all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's New
But
York.
so, anyways,
Yeah.
I was literally, I'm talking, this is Thursday. Like, the concert was on Friday. This
Oh.
was on Thursday.
Okay. Okay.
I was riding my bike. I saw a dude, African American gentleman, stick his head out of a car window, and he was waving a Cleveland Cavaliers jersey at a group of Dominican kids. Does that sound like anything to you?
No.
Okay, it was a Crip threatening three Trinitarios. Like
Oh.
it was a threat. It was gang. It was like, I see you, motherfucker. I'm here, I'm watching you.
Ooh, okay,
Like
yeah,
it, and like
yeah.
I hated knowing what was going on.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
because
yeah.
like they weren't engaging with me. It was a
Hmm.
ways away, but like it was like I do
Yeah.
not fucking like knowing that there are two groups of people that I know have
Hmm.
weapons on them. Like they have weapons. That you are not
Yeah, right
out.
there.
You're not out on the
Yeah.
street if you don't have weapons. And so, anyways, saw that, then parked the city bike like down a block or so, and then walked to get to the park where my daughter was. Get to the park, dude and his crew is at the park. They're all just smoking weed, like over by the basketball courts. But like my brain, it was like I don't like, are the other dudes gonna show up? Like,
Hmm.
because this
Hmm.
is how the stuff happens.
Yeah.
But that being said, it was like I also had to remind myself that it's like you were around gangs the whole time you've lived in New York and you just didn't know they were
Yeah.
there. Like
It's true. It's
it's like you
true.
just didn't know. And it's
Yeah.
like they're
Didn't know the
not
language and
they're
yeah.
not interacting with me. They're not
Yeah.
like, like yeah, of course, like it's not a good feeling to know about it. And I've talked to colleagues about that, how that's like one of the worst parts about the PTSD of the prison job is you
Hmm.
just learn too much and like
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Hmm.
but all that being said, it also really makes the work more essential because I have
Hmm.
spent so many times with these folks, and I've literally never met a person that I didn't think was rehabilitatable, like at all. No, that's a lie. I've met one who was not cool. Like
Okay.
it's like I'm a pretty
Yeah.
tolerant person, and I will tell you
Hmm.
that like as a tolerant cisgender straight hetero white male, I got nervous talking to this dude.
Hmm.
Like, so I'm not saying that folks like that don't exist, but they're rare,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's important to remember that there are nuances. And this is like where white liberals are just awful, is that
Yep.
there you do not have to be a reactionary, racist, fascist to
Hmm.
acknowledge that there is danger also when working with people in complicated situations. It's like I always tell people, it's like, yo, like I will go anywhere that I need to go where like people need to be. But like none of those folks are gonna know where I live. None of them are gonna know I have a daughter. Like,
Hmm.
there
Yeah.
it's like just because you have to be smart about it too.
Yeah.
And it's just there's a lot of white liberals that really they want to do the like soft healing dialogue, but they have no idea what they're actually getting into. It's like you don't know the level of trauma
Yeah.
this person's feeling. Like,
Oh yeah, this is like the cult world I came from.
oh yes,
Insert like a vomit emoji here right now.
yeah,
Yeah, that whole ideology of that. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's also just like um these these behavior patterns that we're paying attention to. It happens in any space, any circle. Like I was just
Hmm.
mentioning to you, just because of the circumstance, I'm not going to be specific, but there's an incident going on at a public place that my wife and I are involved with right now that is dealing with the same nonsense. I don't think this person is necessarily, like a Jim Jones, but like they're still abusing power. It's still like making a very toxic workplace for people. They're
Yeah,
using their position of power to do some things that are definitely giving some red flags.
I think this is part of like where you and I can get super hyper fixated on this and like this
Mm-hmm.
endless fascination. And I don't understand how other people don't get so fascinated by it. But when you break it down, it's like behavioral psychology dynamics
Mm-hmm.
and tactics, like it's just replicated over and over and over again, whatever the context or environment or place of the
Mm-hmm.
world, what have you, you can find it once you see it, once you know that language, right? So yeah, it's just it blows my mind all the time that it's
Yeah.
there, and I try to communicate that to people so I get them as excited as I am about it. Like, oh, this is something really like if it's a
Yeah.
connecting thread to all of this, like that's important. And
Yeah.
that's when we talk about like cult culture and these kind of things. So yeah.
I'm curious, like, so you're a Canadian, and I'm just gonna be very like direct because of our circumstance that we're in right now. What kind of stuff are you all hearing about the United States? Like what's like the daily kind of insight you're hearing about what's going on over here?
Um, I'm not up to par immediately in news. I was just in a thesis hole.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but it's interesting. It's definitely, I watched, I don't know if you've seen the comedy of Josh Johnson. He's from the
Yes.
States. He's been touring Canada
Yeah.
recently. But he has this whole sketch where he just compares the news of Canada and the news in the States. And he starts off talking about, the news in Canada is, it's just so cute. Like it's like this guy put this sign over here. I can't believe he put that sign over here, and it's like top news. And then he's like, well, and then what's going on where I'm from, and like kind of going back and forth with just the facts of those news, like different sets of news, and just
Oh
over
my
the fence
God.
what's happening.
Oh my
But it
God.
really does, I think, speak to this. We do have a bit of a Canadian glaze over our eyes in
Mm,
terms of even though things are right next to us and we've come close, even in the past election, that there was
mhm,
a close chance it was going conservative, very similar to Trump. It's like, oh, it's still not going to happen to us, and still we're just going to focus on these love and bubbles and butterflies and things,
mhm,
and everything is a little more distanced and removed to the reality, as far as I've
mhm,
witnessed,
mhm,
because the sense of urgency doesn't seem to sink in for the
mhm.
most part. And relatability, they're still just like it's removed.
Yeah.
Um, if
Do
that
do you
answers.
yeah, no, it does. Do you feel that there's a more urgent like sense of urgency? I've got my
Absolutely.
answer. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Me too. Yeah.
You
I
know, I
think
think that's part of why I'm so
yeah.
passionate about talking about this stuff, like with
Yeah.
you and with anybody,
Yeah.
because of that urgency that it's like, well, and I know why people can't hear it and see it as well, because it's part of that the cult veils and the tactics of that. So I can't, at least I have some answer to that, but still, it's hard to not say this is so urgent. We're
I
next. It
mean,
can happen to us. We're all in line to some degree.
it's pretty shocking how people cannot recognize that Steve Bannon is a literal fascist and Marjorie Taylor Greene is a literal fascist and Lauren Boebert is a literal fascist and Matt Gaetz is a literal fascist and Charlie Kirk is a literal It's like people are I am they just have it's like well no they're not fascists or like they're
Yeah.
not white supremacists and
Yep.
it's like and like even people make these nonsense arguments about right-wing populism and it's like right-wing populism is always a scam. It is always blaming someone else and it is always in service of the elite,
All
always.
tactics 101. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's it again. I always come back to this. This is the only thing that makes sense to me because,
Mhm,
logics and talking about actual factual things and, they don't really have a place in those kind of conversations when people are really deeply under the veil of a
mhm,
systemic cult or what have you, a certain ideology that they're being sold over and over again
mhm,
in their daily lives. So that's the challenge. But I think this is why something like what you're doing with music is so
mhm,
important on so many levels, but because we do need to stir the consciousness in a way that's not so obvious. Like we're going to sit here and have a conversation and get heated and triggered. That's the beauty of art and music. Just
there have been some interesting moments lately like I've found that sometimes when I get into especially like uh black liberation spaces that there's a
mhm,
lot of like sort of um spiritual like openness to like new religious movements and like
mhm,
there's just a lot of like aware like a lot of people get involved in religious movements or with charismatic leaders and authorities and it's been
mhm. Yep.
it's so the thing I wanted to point out about this is that it's been very interesting to learn the actual nuances of what would be a high control group and what would be a fringe idea. Because
Hmm.
I'll give an example. There's a gentleman that I have been working with. I don't even know, actually, I may have misgendered them, but there's a person who literally is part of this community and identifies as a prophet. And my cult red flags shot off like when I heard this.
Yeah.
But the
Hmm.
more I've gotten to learn, and I'm talking about this in a professional setting, like I don't have any connection with this person like outside. I think that they're literally just they're a clairvoyant or an empath. Like that's my scientific way of explaining it.
Okay.
They have not shown any signs of abuse, of danger. Like I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it's not there, but
Yep. Hmm.
it's just that kind of thing where I've had to like understand that people like you and me might think of the world dichotomously. And I've noticed this with the cult recovery space where I mean this happened with the atheist movement too, where it was like you're either pro cult or anti cult. And it's
Hmm.
like we should be against abuse of power. Like it's like that's what we should be against. It
Hmm.
is yeah.
Hmm. That's the binary. It's such a huge tactic to hold this in place,
Yeah.
all of this, right? One or the
Well,
other.
and this is the thing, like one of the social workers that I worked with in hospice care brought up, it was like, did you have any ideas 10 years ago that you think are absolutely insane now that you ever believed it? It's like, yeah, I was a 9/11 truther. Like I was a 9/11 truther for like 6 months. Like I was
Yeah.
like very all on like all those websites and I was a
Oh.
teenager and I was in high school. But like yeah,
Yeah.
and so the social worker just pointed out that like if you can wholeheartedly believe something that you grow out of, why assume that people can't adapt and change with
Mhm.
their beliefs too? And there's just so many like a lot of people aren't really fundamentalists, which is
Yeah.
gonna be yeah, this is where the nuance
Mhm.
comes in. A lot of people are
Yeah.
fundamentalists except when it comes to their personal
Yeah.
situation.
Selectively. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think, you touched on it at your concert with, I can't remember where, maybe when you were speaking, maybe when your friend came up, um,
Yeah.
remind me of his name, but um,
Lucius.
Lucius, and
Yeah.
you both were addressing, I think, the differences and just the coalition building, essentially.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
in fact, these stark differences that we, or whatever we perceive them or whatever, that's the invitation to coalition building. Like, it's not going to
Hmm.
be comfortable. Coalition building is specifically uncomfortable, and you're, next to people and interacting with people you never would otherwise. But to get through, to last generationally and whatnot, like you have to come together. This is the point we're at. This is part of the urgency. And
Hmm.
you two were touching on that the other night.
I mean, we've been speaking about, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of Lucius. He can speak for himself when he comes to join us sometime. But just from my perspective of it, is that I've heard some things that I definitely would not consider woke. Come out of some of the community's mouth. But
Yep.
like that being said, it's like I absolutely say shit that could be offensive or just completely oblivious on how offensive it could be to
Yeah.
another person just because of the
Yep.
content. And, like
Absolutely.
I had a private conversation with Lucius and I brought up
Uh-huh.
R. Kelly and he was like, I don't want to fucking talk about R. Kelly. I was like, but like we talked about R. Kelly and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say very obviously it's a uh, big complicated situation in the community with R. Kelly because his music has been a part of the soundtrack for the
Mm,
last 30 years, and like
true. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean even like Space
Mm,
Jam, like churches sing, I believe I can
yeah.
fly. It's
Oh,
at
yeah.
people's
Huge.
weddings. So there's all these complicated
Yeah.
things, but anyways, fast forward, we're on the podcast and Lucius is like, yeah, we need to talk about R. Kelly. And I had the like, oh Jesus Christ, I don't want to like in and it was like I've conditioned
Excellent.
myself enough to be able to just blurt the thing out. But then when I actually hear somebody else blurt it out, it's like, oh, that does suck. Like that
The
really
other
like,
side of it.
oh yeah, it's like I don't actually want to talk about R. Kelly. Like that's ugh.
But it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not about the want. No,
yeah.
that's
Well,
yeah.
and like even just stuff like we've been talking where it's like I probably would have chosen another ethnicity if I was speaking to another ethnicity. Like if that makes any sense. Like it's like if I was
Yep.
talking to a Ashkenazi Jewish person, I would be like, gotta talk about Harvey Weinstein. Like, you know, yeah. There, oh, are you ready? So this is
Yeah.
here's a um in hip hop music, I was going through a huge Biggie Smalls phase before all the Puff Daddy stuff came out.
Okay.
Apparently, it's been out for like years, which is normally the case with these folks. But when he actually was like getting his houses searched and everything, right before that, it's going through a big Biggie Smalls phase. Biggie Smalls is one of the greatest rappers of all time, and Puff Daddy just needs to shut the fuck up on these albums. And so, anyways, literally told a weed person that, like at the weed store, was just like, yeah, like Puff needs to just shut the fuck up. And it was like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
dude, like Jesus. And then like 2 months later, like all this stuff starts happening. Well,
Yeah.
anyways, there's a live video of Biggie that I've been showing my class. Where the sample they have is originally R. Kelly singing It's Unbelievable, but they don't have the samples, so Puff Daddy's singing it in the microphone. It's like, man, there is such a history of shitbag
Yeah.
people that have sang that
People
line.
out there.
Like, yeah. Well, and like to be frank, I do try to study like when I learn about a new person, this is where the cult recovery stuff comes in handy, is it's good to look at people's like legal issues on their Wikipedia page.
Mm,
Just like that's how Bill Cosby got
yeah.
found out because he had all of those were on his Wikipedia, but it was when
Hmm.
the comedian Herman I'm brain farting in his name, but comedian basically said he was like Bill Cosby's a fucking rapist. Look that shit up, and people looked it up, and it was
Uh,
like, oh my god, Bill Cosby has like like dozens of lawsuits that are NDA agreements
huh.
with women, over like decades.
I didn't
Um,
know that's how it leaked and got out. That's interesting.
yeah. Well, so anyways,
Yeah.
that's the same thing that
That's
happened with
right
Puff
there.
Daddy. It literally happened with
Mm,
Puff Daddy. And so I now do that when I look at people's stuff just to have an
yeah.
idea. And Biggie, so
Yep.
Biggie has two major charges. One was he had a robbery attempt when he was 17. The other one was a crack cocaine possession because he was selling. And that to me is totally normal poverty issues. That is not a
Hmm.
dispositional thing. That is not a power abuse thing. And it's like
Yep.
that's very easy to like process through. Whereas somebody who has like a very serious like pattern of serial abuse,
Hmm.
it is more challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pattern. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Whew.
Wow. Well, we've been chatting for like,
Mhm.
about an hour, 40
I
minutes.
mean,
So
I still have like pages of questions about your music and all the paths, but we can save for another time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's all
I
very
guess
fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, well it was awesome that you watched it. It really was the kind of the culmination of the last 5 years, like integrating politics and music therapy and improvisation into like one coherent concept. And
It
it
was like a
that
reveal of like who you are
yeah,
now.
yeah, I'll give that. Well, and like the thing that was so cool was learning all the songs because like
Mm,
it,
amazing.
it took a long time to find the music because I didn't want it to be like all
Oh.
obvious songs. Like I didn't want it to be
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. So
Solidarity
you
Forever.
actually you really
Yeah,
researched and didn't
yeah,
rush it, or which
yeah,
is how you're supposed to do the work. Yeah.
yeah. And it was like you just learn so much. Like the Sudanese composer Muhammad Wardi, his piece that uh it translates as hand over the keys to my country, but it's like you learn about the fascist takeover in Sudan just by this song that happened in the 1990s. And he was Muhammad Wardi was like a very significant Muslim scholar and like very involved in
Mm,
the Sufi movement and like very into the like
mm,
esoteric enlightened. He was also a member of the Sudanese Communist Party. And
mm.
there's just these like
Fascinating.
yeah, and he's a virtuoso. I don't know the instrument he plays off the top of my head, but he's a virtuoso and I listen to his music. But then you also like there's a Guyanese singer who covered one of his songs as like a pop song, and I found that just by accident, and I ended up using that for the actual transcribing of the music because it was
Mm,
much more like pattern based because it was like whereas the original Muhammad
uh,
Wardi version he's like freeform all over it.
okay.
um, so it's like the phrasing is like it doesn't make any sense in Muhammad Wardi's like version.
So it
Um,
makes sense that this took years for you to really come to a point of
yeah,
releasing it. There's a lot of work, a lot of layers.
yeah,
And you want to
yeah.
do it right. You want to do it because you're walking that fine line of like a lot of indigenous, marginalized circumstances where you're wanting to embody and be that ally in a good way and not cross over that cultural
Hmm.
appropriation that's so fragile. But how
Oh
do you do
yes,
it in respect and all, and taking the time to be thorough like that is something we don't have the patience for
yeah,
often. It gets us in
yeah.
trouble because of the speed of capitalism and everything like that. So,
Hmm.
so that's,
Well,
yeah, that
it's
makes
like why
sense.
we have woke capitalism. Like it's like why we
Yeah.
have that like nonsense. Like Nike puts out Black Lives Matter. It's like I definitely prefer that to
Mhm.
not that, but it's not exactly
Yeah,
like
still.
good
Hmm.
example of allyship. Like it's like all right,
No.
slave labor. Like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It can be performative for a lot of that. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, I don't know. There's it was just very cool learning all the different pieces of music, but also you like there's so many pieces that were not included. And like I actually
So what are you
felt
gonna do with that? Is it
well,
gonna keep going like
it's gonna
beyond the
hopefully
two
be
albums?
I
Yeah,
hopefully
series?
will. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I wanted to do one which would be Laeh Su Tel lullabies, which would all be lullabies
Oh, that's
from different
beautiful.
cultures. And then
There's so many
uh
places you could go with this.
yeah,
Like it's
well
really
I
kind of an unexplored avenue in terms
yeah,
of wide reach of people, and it's so interesting because we never would otherwise really get exposed to this work that is so
yeah.
amazing. Um,
Yeah, that was the other piece was so like and this can be maybe the final thought for our discussion and then we can close out. But just back to the lyrics piece of it, if
mm,
you listen to any indigenous folk music that has like a contemporary recording of it, so mariachi music, Delta blues music, um, raga music from India, if you listen to any lyric driven art form in the
mhm,
early days prior to rock and roll, prior to funk music, prior to hip hop, like in the early days it would be completely lyrically driven. So that's why the blues, like if you listen to old school Delta blues, the phrases are uneven because they'll just say the line and accompany while they're singing. When they're done with the
mhm,
line, they switch chords for the next line. Whereas
mhm.
like now we would have like a much more steady beat because
Yeah.
of just the technology and dance music and everything. And there's nothing, I don't have anything against that.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
very
yeah. And
accepting of technology
mhm,
is what technology is. But that being
mhm.
said, it just changes the phrasing. Like if you ever listen to mariachi music, it feels
Yeah,
uneven and it's because they just say the sentence and then they say the next sentence. But
I love it.
yeah, and so that was just one thing that was
Hmm.
very deep about learning the music was that you start to see some universalities across various
Mm.
cultures. I mean, honestly, and I hope this doesn't come off as like an enlightened centrist liberal piece of garbage, but but like honestly, there's one of the songs I chose that was not at the album release was Tyler Childer's Long Violent History. And he wrote that album. It's a mostly instrumental bluegrass album from 2020. Straight up Kentucky bluegrass, like
Mm.
straight up. the last song is called Long Violent History, and it's
Mm.
comparing the Battle of Blair Mountain amongst the miners and the United States police,
Wow.
and the Black Lives Matter movement that was going on contemporarily. And he's
Wow.
basically yelling at people in Kentucky that, like, you know this shit. Like, you've done,
Hmm.
like, our ancestors went through this. But even his album cover, he's like wearing like one of those like ties that they wear in Kentucky. Like he
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
looks like he's like, I am of this culture. And the thing I
Mm.
appreciate about it is that when you listen to like real bluegrass music, it has a lot of like similar phrasing to mariachi music or to raga. Like it's
Hmm.
much more moving through time as opposed to vertically constructed.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
that makes any sense. And
Makes total sense.
that for the final thought, that was the biggest thing that I think came out in this project that I
Mm.
do feel happy about. That it um I've been trying to think like a lyricist, even though there are technically no lyrics happening. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so
so
cool.
yeah.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
and
Yeah.
it happens in different. Like Frank Sinatra said, he thought like a trumpet. He always thought like he was a trumpet when he sang. So it's like it's not uncommon for people to like do
Yeah,
analogies
yeah.
internally, and it's like I'm just gonna sing a song. Like that's how I've been thinking about it, which was not the
Hmm.
way I used to improvise. So, um, yeah.
It's very, very special what you're doing. So,
Yeah.
so your album, your double album
Mhm.
is available now?
Yeah, it's go to I mean it's on Spotify, but just go to www.dorianwallace.com
Okay.
and go under works, my works page, and you'll find everything
Okay.
that I do.
Perfect.
Um,
And
but yeah,
then your video will be available soon-ish once
yeah,
that's
yeah. And there's
done.
actually videos for each track of the album that have been made, as well as the concert video.
Okay.
So those are going
Okay.
to be releasing over time throughout the year,
Nice.
which should be exciting. Um,
And does this mean you're just continually already working on more of the songs and protest works that it
yeah,
didn't make it to
well,
these albums and
I'm
things?
taking a little bit of a breather for a second.
For sure.
But I am starting to think like because the two big political movements that I completely left out of this project are Palestine and South Africa.
Hmm.
And I have music too that I could have chosen, but it was hard to pick because I had so many songs and it had to be a certain kind of aesthetic experience. And the problem really was I had already started shaping the album by the time the genocide
Hmm.
really
Yeah.
blew up. And I'm not
Okay.
saying I should have been more mindful, to be frank, about the situation prior. Like that's just to be super frank.
Well, a lot of us can
But
say that. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, well, but I mean, but it's just the point is that like we have to acknowledge those things. So I do feel I feel like I did a disservice to the Palestinian movement
Hmm.
and just any anti-apartheid movements in general by not really focusing on that. But on the other side of it, just to be perfectly like blunt, is sometimes this stuff is really heavy. And like I have
Yeah.
learned that I've had like I don't watch the videos of what goes on in Palestine. I know
Yeah.
some people
Hmm.
do, I've seen enough violence in my life
Hmm.
that if I can choose to not see it, I can learn about it. I can read about it, but I cannot see it because it will
Yeah, you
not
have to
leave.
be very
Yeah,
specific and conscious that when you ingest it in what form.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
'Cause,
And it's heinous because like it, like I didn't watch the George Floyd video, um,
mhm.
but that's because like that was like the 10th murder video I'd seen the year, and
Yeah.
like it was like I don't need to watch a 9 minute one. Like
Hmm.
it was just it was like, yeah, I know he dies, I know it's abuse, like like um
We're all traumatized. We all have to kind of
yeah,
gauge those
yeah,
things because it's a lot, even though it's a privilege at the same time to say I'm not going to watch this, engage with this. But yes,
yeah.
yeah.
No,
Well,
there's layers to all of it, and you do have
always.
to know. I always tell people, trauma is trauma. You can be a trans black female who is houseless with in the foster program and still be a victim of sexual assault. You can be an upper class white lady who works in the financial district and still be a victim of sexual assault. And neither there should not be a competition in regards to the trauma. Like people always tell me the like, oh, it's not the trauma. Like I couldn't deal with that trauma, and it's like we all
Mm,
have things, and it's like I'm comfortable in this environment, but there are other environments I'm extremely uncomfortable in, and like
yeah.
you have to know yourself, and it's like for whatever reason I'm comfortable with this. And,
Hmm.
I mean, comfortable
I
is not
know.
the right word, but tolerant.
I
I'm
know.
tolerant of it.
Yeah, can handle
Yeah.
that at that point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think people like you and me we are survivors. Like we have a survivorship that pushed us towards wanting to make sure that violence doesn't happen to other people.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Got work to do.
All right, awesome. Gwyneth, where can people find you? And thank you for
Uh,
interviewing me on my own podcast. Uh,
I want to do it more. I have more questions, but um, I will say too, you don't have to wait for another album. It is more common that you release like EPs or singles at a time. So if it
mhm,
comes to you, like for Palestine or whatever, like that
mhm.
could just be what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm undercover right now for different reasons, but I'll be hanging out with you sometimes here,
Okay. Okay.
and I'll
Yeah.
be
Everything
to myself.
okay?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
everything's okay. It's just a strategy of timing of when I will be more out there
Yes. Yeah.
with my stuff, whatever that is.
Yeah. And so next time we're going to talk about your thesis or dissertation, which is
Maybe dissertation,
yeah, we're going
maybe.
to talk about your dissertation next time.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to talk to you about
Yeah.
that because that could be
Yeah.
wheel praxis stuff and all that stuff. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well,
Awesome.
with that being said, this is This Machine Kills Fascists. My name is Dorian Wallace, he, him, and we will catch you next time. Peace.